Hey, everybody. Hey, welcome to another edition of East to West. Hey, it's been a long time since I've done a show. I'm pretty excited to get back into it. I just love being able to spend a few minutes with you just to chat, see how things are going, see how you're doing, share a little hope and love, hopefully, and just hang out together around this microphone and just enjoy each other here in the land of the internet. I gotta get all set up here. Hey, Danny, how you doing, buddy? Oh, all right. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Man, I hope you guys are doing good out there. I hope you're not out in this crazy rain. Rain is good though. Rain nourishes. Rain is very has a very useful component in our lives. Sometimes it drives us crazy, especially when we forget our umbrellas. But rain is an essential part of life, nourishing. Just that time of refreshing. God talks about rain in the Bible a lot as a time of just refreshing, just washing away, and nurturing. And one of the things that I really, really love is that it nourishes the trees. I'm a big tree guy. We have two beautiful red maple trees in our backyard, and God really and I've just really realized over the years how much God has used trees to really drive home his point whenever he's telling a story, or whenever he's trying to show somebody the error of their way, or the direction they're supposed to go. Like Jonah. Here's Jonah, this prophet, and you're like, what does a tree got to do with Jonah? Give me time. Help me work through this. Stay patient, and we'll work through it together. But Jonah was this prophet, and God told him, hey, I want you to go to Nineveh. I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to preach there, and go there and tell you what I tell you to tell them. And he's like, I'm not going there. I'm not going to Nineveh. Nineveh's not worth it. I'm not going down there. So he decides to take a boat and goes to Tarsus. I think it's Tarsus. Yes. And so he takes a boat, and while he's in the boat, God causes this crazy storm to come. And I just, in my own life, when I feel like I find myself drifting, and I feel like I'm not doing what God tells me to do, sometimes a storm blows up in my own life. And sometimes time and moments come when I'm like, okay, I'm out of control here. I don't know how to calm this down. I don't know how to get back. But Jesus, because he's so loving, always makes a way back. And he made a way back for Jonah. It was painful. It was lonely. It was undetermined how it was going to turn out. But it was still a way that God made for him. So while he's on this boat, this huge storm comes up, and everybody's afraid on the boat. So they cast lots, and they decide it's this guy Jonah's fault that the storm is up. So we're going to throw Jonah overboard. And Jonah said, well, actually Jonah said, throw me overboard. And they were like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. And so he finally convinced them. And so they threw Jonah overboard. The storm ended, but here comes a big fish. And the big fish just gobbles Jonah up. And he's in the belly of this fish for 3 days, which really I always find ironic. Not ironic, but symbolic, because that's how long Jesus was in the tomb, was 3 days. So Jonah got to experience, I think, the precursor of what people felt when Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. Uncertainty, darkness, loneliness, sadness, this uncontrollable urge to just give up. But Jonah didn't do that. Even in the belly, Jonah quickly realized, I'm sure as soon as the gulp happened, I'm sure Jonah realized smartly that God was trying to send a message. God was trying to correct his direction, because in the belly he prayed. He prayed to God instead of cursing God and blaming God for his situation. He realized that he was in the belly of the whale by his own doing. And when we veer off in our own lives from God's plan in our life, or from that calling he's put on us, or that moment he's asked us to walk into, and we start walking the other way, and when we realize, oops, I shouldn't have been going that way, and even quicker when we can realize that it was us that put us in the belly of that whale. It wasn't Jesus. It wasn't God. That wasn't God's intention for Jonah. God didn't intend for Jonah to end up in the belly of a whale. God intended for Jonah to end up in Nineveh. So he prayed and he prayed and he prayed. And 3 days later, the fish gave him up. And guess where he went? He went to Nineveh. And he preached and he preached and he preached. And people got healed. People got saved. And then he goes outside and it's hot. And he prays. And God sends him a fig tree. This tree grows up over Jonah and gives him shade and gives him protection. And Jonah just loved this tree so much. It was like, oh my gosh, this is probably one of the best things that's happened to me. Well, overnight the tree dies. And Jonah had such a loss. He was so sad for this tree. And God said, you have compassion over a tree? Such compassion for a tree, but you don't have compassion for my people? And it's just crazy what we will find compassion for and what we will not find compassion for. I mean Jesus had to use a fish and a tree to convince Jonah that his people were worth more than a fish and a tree. And so I just love these stories with the tree. You know, when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he's praying in a tree grove. He's praying in a garden full of trees, and not just any trees. These are olive trees. These are trees that the Israelites really depended on for their livelihood, for their food. Olives were pretty much the main ingredient in anything back then. And these trees, if properly taken care of, would produce olives for thousands of years. There still might be trees there from when Jesus walked there. There still might be trees there from when Jesus prayed. But it's just amazing that he goes into this garden that is so symbolic of his life. You know, here's this tree that was planted, that God planted this tree, and it grew up right. It grew up nourished. It grew up healthy, and it produced fruit, and that's still producing fruit today. I mean, these trees are just amazing. I've seen pictures of them on Facebook, but I don't think you can even enjoy the majesty of these trees until you actually get there and realize that these trees have been here there's some trees there that were there before this country was even formed. You know, and it's just amazing that you just think these trees, like I think of my red maple trees, how long can they last? Not 2,000 years. You know, but I just look at them all the time and I just see how sturdy they are, healthy they are, how much shade they provide. Not only for me, but it's really cool because our neighbors comment all the time. It's like, we love sitting outside as the sun's going down because it provides such shade from the sun because of the shadows of the tree. So trees for Jesus is a very powerful tool to just provide, you know, that physical representation of his love. You know, he was hung on a tree. You know, they say he died on a tree. He you know, it's amazing, you know. And then there's a story in the Bible. I love it. and I don't love it, because if any of you out there know me, you know I like my closure. I like to know when it's going to end, how it's going to end. Two-parters for TV shows for me are tough. Season finales, always tough for me. Because now I got to wait and speculate what's going to happen when it starts again. So there's a story in a parable that Jesus said, and I don't really have it, but I'm going to summarize because I don't want to misquote it. But basically, this farmer has planted a bunch of trees in this garden, bunch of trees. All of them have produced except for one tree. All of them have produced except for this one tree. And so the farmer gives up on the tree and says to the gardener, I want you to chop this tree down. It's not producing anything. It's just taking up space. And the farmer had pity on this tree, compassion on this tree, and said, give it one more year. Let me water it. Let me fertilize it. Let me take care of it. And then after a year, if it still doesn't produce fruit, then we can cut it down. And that's the end. What happened in a year? I need to know what happened in a year. I think that Jesus doesn't want us to focus on what happened at the end of the year. I think Jesus wants us to focus on the grace and mercy that the gardener got the owner to feel for the tree and to give it another chance. And obviously, if you know the story, we're the tree, obviously. We are to produce fruit. We're not just there to take up space in the garden and look pretty. We are to produce fruit. The owner is God, the Father, who planted this tree, loves the tree, but it's got to do something. The Bible says we clearly have to produce fruit. We have to do things. We can't just say, oh, yeah, I gave my heart to Christ. I'm good. No, we have to produce fruit, because I think the more we produce fruit on the top of the tree, I think the development of that fruit helps deepen our roots into the ground. Because as the taller as the tree gets, if you ever noticed, like in my yard, some of the roots are coming up just a little bit. Because the taller the tree gets, the more the roots have to dig into the ground to hold that tree upright. And if the soil's bad, if it's not been tended to, you're going to end up just being a little stick. And you're going to grow tall with no roots, and a wind's going to come along and blow you over. There was a tree down the street from us that had been broken in half. I wish I had taken a picture of this and could share it now, because when my wife and I walk by this tree, it's amazing. It's powerful. The tree was broken in half. Somebody said, let me have it. Give me a year. Give me a year. Let me nurture this tree. Let me fertilize this tree. They wrapped it. They put string around it to brace it. And I will take a picture of this tree next time, and I will put it on Facebook. This thing is amazing. It came back with love and nurturing. It produced. This person who nurtured that tree, whoever it was, made this tree come back. And it's amazing. I just love it. I love walking by that tree. It's just amazing, because we're like, this tree is toast. It's not going to make it. Cut it down. Throw it away. It's not going to make it. But somebody said, hey, you know what? Let me give it a shot. Let me see what I can do. And now a few years later, oh my gosh, it's growing. It's got leaves on it. It's like it was never broken. And that's what Jesus is saying to God the Father here in this parable. This tree may look like it's dead. This tree may look like it's worthless. This tree may look like it's not going to do anything. It's just gonna wither and die. And Jesus, through his life and his sacrifice, said, "Let me have a shot at the tree. Let me have a shot at this little guy. Let me see what I can do." And so I think for the longest time, when I've always been like, I want to know the end of the story. I think that is the end of the story for this tree. I think that this tree grew to be that tree in the boulevard around the corner. And that's what we are. And that's what God loves, just loves to just stir in our hearts and to work that dirt around our roots, and just to grow, I just love all the different, ways he just uses vegetation and uses the beauty of this earth to talk about his love for us. In Job, when Job is talking to God and saying, "Where were you? Where are you? Where were you? Why complaining to God?" And God says, "Were you there with me at creation?" And God got to show him, I believe, the Garden of Eden. And I can't even imagine what that looks like. Would have looked like back then with those trees and the vegetation and the flowers and just this beautiful plot of land that God made for Adam and Eve to live in permanently. It wasn't meant to be a temporary dwelling. It was meant to be a permanent dwelling. And we all know the story. We all know why it became temporary. And so because of one choice, they lost the beauty of that garden and had to go work the ground. I'm sure Adam is like, what do we do? I mean, what? I don't even know the first thing about having to make a garden or plant or do whatever. But it's just amazing. I can't wait to see the Garden of Eden. I hope we get to see the Garden of Eden. I hope the Garden of Eden is in heaven. I hope when the new earth comes down and the old earth passes away and the new city comes down, I hope like Central Park in New York. If you've ever been to New York, I have not, but I want to go. But if you've ever been to New York and you've been to Central Park, I've heard it's amazing. It's like this forest inside of this city. You've got this city full of pavement and concrete, skyscrapers, buildings, buses going by, cars going by, millions of people going by. And yet in the center of it is this just amazing park that somebody at some point decided that it was valuable enough to save. And it was valuable enough to keep up, to fertilize, to garden, to water, to just maintain it so people can find delight in this park. And it's amazing. It's just crazy. I mean, so that's what I hope what heaven is. It's this grand, beautiful city. And in the center of it is the Garden of Eden with all these trees and all these, just this beautiful place of vegetation where God walked among his people and will walk among his people again in the garden. I believe that. And so it's just amazing that when you go out and you see trees, they're more than just leaf bearers. They provide, I like to go when I'm mowing, I like to hide under the shade when it's hot. And sometimes I just like to stand there and listen to the birds. I like to listen to the birds talk and chatter and hear the trees talk with the winds and the waves. You know what I mean? It's just amazing. And it's amazing that he used trees because back then I'm sure there weren't a lot of red maple trees in Jerusalem. There weren't a lot of oak trees. I think the only really trees that they had were the olive trees. So I think when Jesus mentioned trees back then, I think it was, if people really understood what he was saying about trees, I think it became even more powerful because they could relate to the olive trees and they could see that this thing called salvation is going to last for thousands of years, millions of years, for all eternity. You know, you know, my pastor said this morning, he said, the resurrection is going to be eternal for all eternity. It's going to be just amazing. I can't wait. I can't wait to share it with you guys. I can't wait till we get there and we're all just like, we're here, we're in the presence of God, we're just in the just in the moment, and it's just I can't wait. I can't wait. I like talking about God. I like spending time with you guys, just talking about it. I hope that I always just try to encourage you, and we talk about seeds a lot on here. I've gone over the parable of the sower, where he's throwing seeds down on different soils and environments, and how that all is. It's just amazing how God uses a lot of just vegetation in his parables. The mustard seed. Have you ever seen a mustard seed? I mean, it's like this little. I mean, it's tiny. Have you seen a mustard tree? And to think, sometimes I'm amazed when my wife plants like green beans, or she'll plant carrots, or whatever, and she puts the seed in the ground, and it's this little. And then a few months later, it's like this big, like rows and rows of green beans. That's green beans. A mustard seed this big. If you don't know how big a mustard tree is, Google it. It's amazing that a tree can come out of that. Just that little bitty seed. And that's the way God says our faith can be. Our faith can start out as a mustard seed. And if we let the gardener tend to it and water it and fertilize it and mulch it and tend to it, and this tree can grow up to be the biggest, strongest tree anywhere. And that's what God calls us to do. God calls us to be a tree. He calls us to be rooted in that. In Psalm, he talks about the tree that's planted by the stream. The water nourishes the tree, and the tree becomes strong. You're not going to plant a tree in the desert and expect it to live. It's not going to do that. Cactuses in the desert have evolved over years and years and years, and have found ways to preserve water to where they can live. You can't take an oak tree or a red maple tree and plant a seed in the desert and walk away and expect that thing to grow. It's not going to do it. So you can't plant trees in the wrong environment. You got to plant them where they're going to be nourished and where they're going to produce fruit and where they're going to grow. You see all these apple trees. I had my first the other day, about 2 weeks ago. I like pears. But I think I had my first Asian pear that was picked off of a tree. And I'm telling you, it's probably one of the best pears that I've ever had. It was phenomenal. Usually pears for me they're all messy and drippy, and just you get to the point where it's like I don't even want to finish it. It's just too messy. But this pear was so good because it had been nurtured. I'm just going to say it again. Watered, tended to, mulched, looked after, and then the fruit it produced was just so amazing. And I picture Jesus, when we're watering our trees in our lives, tending to them, letting them being tended to. I just imagine Jesus sitting under the cool breeze of our shade and love for him, and he's just hanging out, loving it. And it's just amazing. I mean, he just loves us. And so it's just exciting. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just glad that I get to sit here and share some thoughts with you today, and just hope that, if nothing else, I've gotten you to enjoy just a few moments talking about trees. I mean, not a lot of people, I've not heard a lot of sermons on trees, but I think they do play a very important part in symbolically showing God's love for us. I think they really do play an important part in that. Like I said, over the last stories that I've shared, it's just, he likes to use things that people can relate to. And I think back then, one thing that was very relatable to the Jewish people was the trees, the olive trees, because that's where they got all their nourishment from. And Jesus wanted them now to get all their spiritual nourishment from the one tree that's going to be forever, that's going to be planted, that's deep in roots, run deep. And so I think that's just why he just kept talking over and over again. And it's just crazy. He talks about the fig tree. If he says from the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as branches become tender and puts out leaves, that summer is near. And so also when you see all these things, that he is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So here he is using a fig tree as a way for us to stay focused and to know the fig tree is green. When Jesus is being carried away to be crucified, he's talking to the women, and he says, mourn for yourselves, because if they do this when the tree is green and the wood is green, imagine what it's going to be like when the wood is dry and rotted. So he just likes to use trees and woods and all of it. Where did he go to pray? He prayed in a garden full of trees. He didn't stay in the upper room. He didn't pray until they came and arrested him. He had a meal. He got up and he went to a garden full of trees, and he prayed, and he got his strength there. And he I think, and I'm sure that's not the first time he was at Garden of Gethsemane. I'm sure he visited it frequently. Whenever he was in Jerusalem, I'm sure he went there. And I'm sure he just loved looking at his creation, remembering when each time he planted one of those trees. And I wonder, I'm going to close with this. Here's a thought. I wonder how many times God went into the garden did he think about that moment of creation. I wonder how many times he thought about that. Or when he was just journeying wherever he was going. I wonder how many times he thought about that moment he created the sand, or he created the mountains, or he created the sky or the sun. How many times did he think that and think, what Satan meant for destruction all those years ago to this beautiful garden that I built for my people, soon I'm going to restore it back with my life and my sacrifice to the way this garden was meant to be. And I'm going to end with that. So you guys have a great week. And again, thank you for tuning in today. We're just going to spend the next couple months going over various things. Next week I'm going to talk about empty chairs and empty tables. If you haven't seen Les Mis, or if you have seen Les Mis, you'll understand the quote next week. But just remember, we love you here at East to West. God loves you. And go out and enjoy his creation this week. And go out and just enjoy life. And enjoy each other's company. And just love somebody next week. Wake up every morning determined that you're going to show grace and love to everybody you know. And I'm telling you, at the end of that day, If we do that, it'll be amazing. You'll be like, man, what a great day we had. So until next week, have